All right, Saranac Lake Effect Show. Here we are. We're sharing this mic tonight, Jeremy, because I was doing a work meeting right up until we started recording tonight. So I have my fancy shirt on and my professional athletic shorts. So we are here with a guest. Finally, it's not just me and you anymore. We are honored tonight to have Jack Drury with us. And Jack is a man who has a long history here in Saranac Lake and a lot of, I'm going to say, interesting stories to tell, I'm sure. And we actually have some interesting stories. I think he has a unique connection to both of us. So I'll introduce Jack and thank him for coming on and let him tell his stories.
Yeah, well, I guess I take pride in having a neat connection with each of you. Jeremy, I was on the search committee for your first job in Saranac Lake, so I can take credit for helping bring you to Saranac Lake and all the great things that you've done.
For which I owe a debt of gratitude to you and everybody else who contributed to that.
And then we worked together for about 4 years, I think, on the Village and Town Comprehensive Planning Committee, which at least the village was able to move forward and actually create one. And then, of course, you were a young buck, about 17 years old, when I had what was one of the two most stressful jobs of my life, working at Woodstock 99. And you and your mom came down, and we were in charge of camping for, I don't know, 200,000 people or something.
Yeah, we were way underqualified for that role. I don't know if anybody could have handled that many people. But yeah, basically I felt like it was like we're standing at an entrance and then just hundreds of thousands of people are pouring in, and our job is to help them know where to camp and how to find their lost tents. And someone loses their tent and says, "Mine's the blue one." Like, oh, okay, well, let's go find the blue one in a sea of 300,000. So, but that was a really, really fun experience for a week, which got to be pretty wild as we experienced.
Yeah, it was. It was crazy. And then we were in the back of a panel truck and snuck out the last night when they were setting things on fire. And
yeah, we had to hide our laminates that said staff because the concert attendees were like throwing things at staff because they were so angry about what had happened, which I understood. I mean, I didn't charge them $10 for a bottle of water, but someone did. So
I remember my boss, Brian McDonald, was in charge of the whole camping thing, and he went to a meeting, and they decided to hand out 200,000 candles to a bunch of people under the influence of drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And he said, "I don't think this is going to end well." And it didn't. It's really interesting if you want to have a fun evening. Watch the original Woodstock movie from '69, Peace, Love, and Music, and then the documentary on Woodstock 99, which was just havoc. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think they call it profit stock is what they ended up calling it.
The documentary?
So if you watch the documentary in the Netflix documentary, you'll see all these signs where saying like, end profit stock. And it was a very different experience. But yeah, so that was the last time Jack and I were in a room together, I think was around when we were being ushered away into a safe house at Woodstock.
It wasn't a room, it was the back of it.
The back of a U-Haul or whatever it was. Yeah. So, but anyway, that's not why we were hoping to have Jack on. We wanted to hear, as we've done with many guests, hear a bit more about, kind of how you came to Saranac Lake and the role you've played for the years you've been here, and just hear that story.
Yeah, well, my great uncle had TB, and I never met the man, but I was named after him. He died before I was born, and up here. But I came up and visited my great aunt, his wife, and she was my godmother, and they had no children. And I loved coming up here. I tell people that I knew at the age of 12 I wanted to move to Saranac Lake. And then it was a matter of going to college, and spent a couple of years out in Wyoming, fell in love with the state of Wyoming, but came back and finished up at Cortland, and came up here, and like everybody else now, how do I make a living up here? But my background was recreation, outdoor recreation. I was in love with the outdoors, and I tried working with Paul Smith in North Country, and over time, North Country was the one that picked up the idea and said, "Yeah, let's start a 2-year degree program." Did that for 20 years, and feel like I had the best job in the world. I spent a total of 5 weeks in the summer or fall in the field, and then 2 weeks in the winter. Did that for almost 20 years, and there's stuff on the family, but I loved what I did, and I loved working with students. And then left college, and a friend of mine and I started a consulting business. We found that the skill sets that we were using in the outdoors of facilitating leadership and decision-making development, and was useful in the classroom as well. And we worked with educators and had a really fun time of about 6 years working in the United Kingdom and the Middle East, Lebanon in particular. And so yeah, it's a good run. And then I started working with Joe Dady, who had been at Paul Smith's College on the Hut to Hut project. We now call Adirondack Hamlets the Huts, and got some support from the state to explore the potential for hut to hut travel in the Adirondacks. Those that aren't familiar with that, other parts of the world, particularly New Zealand and Europe, the idea of hiking all day or skiing or snowshoeing or paddling, and then having a lodge or someplace to stay in at night is very popular, and popular in parts of the United States, particularly the Green Mountains, the White Mountains, and then out in Colorado, the 10th Mountain Division has a series of huts. So we're working on that. Well, I say we, Joe's working on that, and his colleagues. I'm all but retired now. I keep busy. I'm doing a little writing. Today I had fun. I do shuttles for hikers. So I took a hiker from Lake Placid down to Northville, and he's on his way back now. So it's kind of fun because I've hiked, the different trails quite a bit, and it's fun talking to those folks and trying to give them a little advice or hearing their stories or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned writing a bit. I'm a frequent reader of, I always escapes me that it's Bushwhack Jack Strax.
That's right.
So what's it, for anybody who doesn't know what exactly is that?
Well, I'm going to blame Bob Seidenstein, who is Inside Dope column writer. I started doing some writing during COVID. I was thinking, maybe I'll write a memoir, autobiography kind of thing. And he kind of made fun of everything that I wrote, except I ended up writing something about the bugs in the spring. And he said, that's the best thing you've ever written. Forget the book, write a column. So he got me started with the folks at the Enterprise. And so it's just trying to share some of the stories of the neat experiences that I've been fortunate enough to have. And, sometimes there's a lesson to be learned, and sometimes there's nothing to be learned. We're just trying to entertain folks a little bit.
Well, can I ask about the bugs? I mean, you spend so much time outdoors.
Yep.
It seems to me that the different bug seasons have been overlapping recently. Right? So it used to be like black flies, mosquitoes, deer flies. Now it seems like it's black flies and mosquitoes.
And of course,
and then deer
for
flies
longer periods of time.
Right.
Yeah,
Is it just me, or is it
I haven't read. Well, this year was a particularly horrible year.
I would agree with that. It was terrible.
But I haven't read anything about that. But it makes sense, intuitive sense, with climate change, and heck, I've been out the last couple of weeks and found still got mosquitoes floating around, and of course you got what I call the ankle biters, the flies that attack my ankles when I'm in a boat. So yeah, I think so. But that's
who knows?
Yeah.
But that's just what it seems. But maybe I should have brought it up since we strive for journalistic excellence here.
Yeah.
Without any facts.
Well, here's my tidbit on bugs. Is that generally speaking, in the Adirondacks, you should never complain about bugs, because in other parts of the world, the two parts that I've had the worst bug experiences are northern Canada, a couple different trips there, and Alaska. And in Alaska, we slapped our arms and counted the mosquitoes in one slap. My record was 27.
Oh.
And then in northern Canada, on slapped my arm, counted the black flies, and after 40, I was so disgusted I threw the rest away. So
Okay, so we've got it. We just don't complain.
that's right. You have to be one with the bugs.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually use the bugs as an advantage. So my wife is from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and so when I convinced her to live here, and the way I explain why the cold is so wonderful is because there's no bugs. Bugs can't survive in this. So you get like 6 months of winter. I was like 6 months of no bugs. So there's always a positive side to look on that. So yeah, but no, I shared stories of her. I remember playing Little League baseball at what used to be called Lions Field, and you just, I mean, you'd finish a game and you'd come home and your neck would just be bleeding, all over it because those black flies and those seams were just relentless. But yeah, this year I think all the rain, maybe it's something, I don't know, all that.
Definitely the rain contributed to it. Maybe the primary instigator of bugs. So your wife is still talking to you?
Yeah, she's still. I mean, we bought this house. I had a lot of things to do, but the first thing I did was put in a brand new wood stove because that was like, brand new wood stove, upgraded and insulation. There's nothing better than spending thousands of dollars in your attic that you're ever going to look at. But had to get the house warm. So yeah, she's converted. She's an Adirondacker now. So, but still, she definitely misses the South sometimes. In like April, when all of her friends are gardening and we're getting kind of in the snow, that's a hard sell.
So I've got a question, Jack. I mean, you've got a long history here. You knew you wanted to be here. You came up for the outdoors, made a career out of it. But obviously, you've been interested in and been a part of the community. So just switch gears away from the wilderness aspect that attracted you here, and just give us your take on some of what it means to you, what the community is all about. What's really meant the most to you?
Where do I start? I think, like you two, I'm one of those people that if you see that something needs to get done, you want to try and volunteer to help get it done. And so, growing up in this community, of course, the population that was right after TB, they found a cure for it. So in the late 50s and early 60s, it was. I look back on it. I wasn't aware because I was too young, but it was tough times. I had a summer job at the Trudeau Institute, and I learned about. I worked in the maintenance department. I'm not a scientist, but it was a great summer job, and I started learning about the community. I started meeting more people than the small segment of friends that I had made. But I'm not sure what it is, but what it was, I think early on you're with your kids and so you coach baseball or play football or whatever it is, and you get involved in those things. And then, Walmart became an issue. I had a lot of people that aren't very happy with me because I co-led the fight to keep Walmart out of Saranac Lake. And then it seemed, the planning board seemed like maybe that's a place I can help out a little bit. So I ended up serving on the town planning board for about 10 or 12 years, and I was chairman for about half that. So, yeah, I like to think that if you see a need, then you should be stepping forward and helping address it. And I like to think that, when people, nothing's worse than someone just complaining and then they just go home. No, democracy requires participation, and that's kind of corny maybe for some, but I believe in it. And I think we're seeing the results of that.
It's more important to remember than right now.
Exactly. But there are so many people in Saranac Lake, and we could, between the three of us, we could probably list 20 or 30 people that are the people that do step forward. And whether you agree with them or disagree with them, you've got to admire the fact that they step forward and are trying to be part of the community and address the issues that need to be addressed.
I was telling somebody the other day who moved here relatively recently and has been able to get involved pretty quickly, which made a big difference. If they were able to get into it. I always tell people it's a community that's worth putting everything in. I think there's probably communities in the country where the best days are behind them and nobody really wants to put anything into it. But here, and that's what keeps me going. It's like there's things that frustrate the heck out of me. But you know what? Overall, it's worth it. And so we all just keep after it because it's just, it needs to happen.
Actually,
Yeah, I would say that I think we kind of have a surplus of it. We don't lack for people being passionate. It's like there's so many passionate people. It's a matter of okay, well, we can't do all of these passion projects. Like which one can we actually do? Because there's finite resources. So I think that's a great thing is we have people who care and they want this place to succeed. People sometimes have different visions for what success would mean, but everyone has the goal on we want this place to continue to be as amazing as it is and to grow it to a certain point. So yeah, I think I feel very fortunate to have been born and raised here, and certainly was one of those kids growing up that was like, can't wait to get the heck out of there. And I went out and saw much of the world, and nothing against any place that I lived, except for Nashville. I did not like Nashville; it was too hot. But yeah, I think it's a really special place and worth arguing over. You have people who maybe don't like you because of Walmart, but you were very passionate about that and you had your reasons. And I think that's just we have a lot of folks like that here, and it's great to hear that story.
and my message to the people that were so upset with me on Walmart was that, all I've done is step forward and try to do things. There's nothing to keep you from stepping forward and trying to do things as well.
Absolutely.
Well, and hopefully, this is something that we should explore one of these days. Is in that case, if you said to someone, if you have a different opinion, step up and make your opinion known. And there is a way for us to all disagree respectfully, be able to just talk through arguments, share facts, share opinion, and not hate each other afterwards. Which I think to some extent we're a bubble in that case because we're all right here. We don't really go to our own enclaves at the end of the day. And I just hope we keep that.
And that's what democracy is all about. Yeah.
So that's a good segue, though. Because you brought a piece of paper. You brought a bunch of notes. So let me just set things up for the next phase of our discussion.
Sure.
So we had an episode on Saranac Lake Marina recently. And I don't know if I told him then or after. I was like, Justin, tell us what you really feel.
Yeah.
It was great. Well, whatever you think about the Saranac Lake Marina, I love the fact that he got passionate about the subject. So it was great. So you reached out because you had some thoughts that you wanted to share from your own perspective on the marina and the lower lake. So that's what your notes are.
Yeah, it's I appreciate your passion and you had some good arguments, and I think first of all, probably number one is it's really unfortunate we've gotten to this point, and I think we all agree that we'd love to see a new marina up and running, and I know I've talked to the vast majority of shore owners on the lake. And they feel the same way. A lot of people think that it's a NIMBY issue, not in my backyard, and the shore owners.
That was one of the vocabulary words that we had.
The three vocabulary words.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can hit
That's
it.
the only one I can spell. He hasn't shared the other one.
Yeah. What was that other word?
Iatrogenic effects. So, yeah, a really obnoxious word that never needs to be spoken again, probably.
Well, but I think there's some good points about that. But in any event, people think that the shore owners don't want the new marina rebuilt and a new marina, and I think that's the farthest thing from the truth. Everybody I talk to says, we're excited about the marina. The ultimate question, which is difficult to answer, is how many boats is too many? And many people say, oh, you're wasting your time. That isn't the issue. The issue is we need to let them rebuild it, let them clean up the environment around there. And yeah, those are all good things. But, it's the classic, once you open Pandora's box, you can't stuff things back in it. And so and my all my various careers were built around prior planning. How you plan, how do you anticipate, and how do you plan for things that you don't know what are going to happen, and you want to anticipate as best you can.
So, and part of the problem is that everyone's been put in this position, in part. I'm not going to say it's the whole thing, because that mandate to do a survey of the water bodies in the Adirondack Park, I think it was from the APA Act, right?
Yeah, 1972, I believe.
So, and the state hasn't done that yet. So there's no assessment done for any lake, right? Where we know what that, because you said carrying capacity.
Right.
And that
Carrying
doesn't
capacity
exist yet.
is the issue. And, well, there's two issues specifically to the marina. One is the wetlands issue,
Yep.
and that's where in the first lawsuit that Tom Jorling won, he brought that lawsuit. Previous commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation, retired from international paper. He has a place on the lake. He brought that lawsuit. They won, and they didn't win, but the judges said it's inexplicable, and that was the word they used, that the state has not done a carrying capacity study. For those that aren't familiar with carrying capacity, it was actually, the term originated with livestock. How many acres, if you have 100 acres, how many cattle can you have on that 100 acres and have enough food to sustain those cattle? And then they started applying it to wildlife, deer, pheasant, waterfowl, that kind of thing. And then they started applying it to outdoor recreation, and saying, and it's an issue the state has kind of ducked. I think it's fair to say that they ducked it since the 70s when it was required, and they just now are addressing it in the high peaks, and hopefully they'll be addressing it in bodies of water as well.
Do you think that it's something that, does the data there, like, is the data collection required? Is it assessing existing data? Like, is it possible to do?
I think that's a great question. I mean, there's certain data that is there. How many people are camping in the campground every year? How many people are passing through each locks a summer? How many hunting licenses or how many deer have been harvested in the Saranac Lake wildfires? All that kind of information you can put together and start seeing patterns. And then I think there's tremendous gaps in data, like how many we have the number of slips that are on the lake from the marina, private landowners. We have the number of parking places for cars and launch sites. So all that is part of the data. But what we don't have is how many people are using the lake on a daily basis. I think a real simple exercise would be to pick 4 or 5 spots on the lake and go out there at certain times a day and just count the boats and see how many people are actually out there. Because I think, everybody has a different opinion about levels of use right now. But I think, so it's all like anecdotal. So we need hard data. Can you go into Hope Bay, Lonesome Bay, pick your bay and how many people are in there. And yeah, probably not a lot. But on the other hand, how many do we want? And that's the $64,000 question. And I think it's critical. One of the things I point out is that, there used to be almost 200 platform camps on that lake. And Crescent Bay seems to fit the need of those 200 platform campers. Now we have 60 campsites, and we need, depending who you talk to, almost twice as many boat slips. What's wrong with this? I don't understand that. Or the recreation patterns, maybe they've changed, and we need to. just point out two things too. One is there's the physical carrying capacity, and that's the number of people that an area can handle, body of water or woods or what have you, before it gets polluted, or air quality or trail erosion or those physical characters. But there's also an aesthetic or psychosocial carrying capacity is to, there's so many people here, they may not be polluting the environment. Boy, I don't want to come here anymore, it's too crowded. The old Bears at a restaurant in New York City, no one goes there anymore, it's too crowded.
Yeah, I think the carrying capacity thing is, I mean, as somebody who works in a data field where I collect data on all kinds of things on people, usually, and students and teachers and things like that, I love data analysis, and getting good data, I think, is super important. And the idea of a carrying capacity, I think I'd love to just like see I'd love to see that done, because for me it'd be interesting to see kind of the science behind how it's done and how do you determine. And it's tricky because you mentioned campsites. One thing that drives me crazy is I love camping. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do is camping on Lower Saranac. And there's certain sites I always want to get, and they're usually booked up. And so I get some other site, and it's fine. But then I'll be on the lake, and you can go online to Reserve America. You can see every single site is booked. I've gone on my boat at night and like driven around the lake at night, and there's maybe 6 campfires. Like no one's camping on some of those nights, but the lake is fully booked. And so that's a whole other topic around like how I think we should enforce reservations, and if you're not there by X time, you got to go. But
there is one
it's a tricky part with the data.
Small piece of good news there, and that is, I think it's just this year they started greening up where you can go out there, and if someone didn't show up to their campsite, you can get their campsite. But until fairly recently, that was impossible to do. You had to do everything through the Reserve America and their 800 number, and that's enough to drive you crazy. Or the website.
I wasn't aware of that. That's great. I love that. So it's by a certain time you can go there. If they're not there, you can claim the site.
That's my understanding. I read a press release of that.
I think that's great.
Wrong question now. Probably doesn't have. There's probably not an answer that we. But the second pond boat launch was years ago. I mean, how did the state decide how many parking spots to put in that parking lot?
That's a great question. And as I understand it, and I'm not certain I have the correct understanding, that I'm not sure if it was the APA or staff at the DEC said, okay, how can we do this without having a carrying capacity? And so they said, oh, we promise we'll do a carrying capacity study after we rebuild the parking lot, expand the parking lot. Well, that was, I don't know how many years ago was that expanded, and they still haven't done the carrying capacity. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, to bring it back to the conundrum, is that there's different parties here that keep going back and forth with lawsuits, protecting what they think is their own interest. And, it's like a pinball machine, it seems like. I'm not sure when it ends. Part of me wishes there was a way to do mediation so that shore owners and others who want to make sure that they have their own interests can honestly and openly say, here's what we really feel. And there's a way to do mediation. I'm not a mediation expert. That's so different than lawsuits. And I know that that's not possible, but sometimes I just wish it's like we could have probably gotten to where we all needed to be 6 years ago.
I agree. I was on the planning board when and I recused myself from this project. But even at that point, it was like, well, is there room for negotiation about how many slips we're going to have? And unfortunately, I don't know the reasons why, but I never got a sense as I was an observer at that point, accused myself that any of the parties were particularly interested in. This is the plan, and I'm sure as a business, you do a business plan, and this is what I need to make a profit or what have you.
It was already like everyone was like ready, tensed up at that point. Not even blaming anybody for that. It's just.
Well, I think it to kind of put a ball in this. We're not putting a ball in the issue because we'll see what happens. But
I'm sure this is not the last time Justin will bring it up.
Oh no, I'm done. I'm done talking about it. I've said my piece, and the things that I said, like I said, I say it again. I think that I love what the marina owners have done to develop that place. I love that the people who are on the other side are very passionate about the environment, because I don't want this place to turn to Disneyland. Like I want, I love the Adirondacks, and so what I was going to say is, we live in a place where people are really passionate about stuff. They're really passionate about keeping this place what it is, and it's a delicate balancing act of development, industrialization, of whatever, while also keeping Saranac Lake and the surrounding area what makes it so great. So I just hope that going forward, we can have, the reason I was excited to, we wanted to have Jack on regardless, but then this issue came up and it was kind of the impetus to get you here. I was excited to hear another perspective on this issue, because that's important. I know I don't know everything, and I have my opinions, and I'm passionate about this, but, I'm not going to dig my heels in and say, well, I'm right, and for anybody else who says something different, and I never really heard of the terms carrying capacity, and like that's a really interesting thing to me now.
At least we can spell that.
All right, I'll spell IATROGENIC. Go back and look it up. That's the word. That's it. So anyway, I think maybe when all the dust settles on the marina issue, we can do another. Maybe we can do a podcast where we have Jack over here and somebody else over here, and you and I can just sit back and let them hash it out and discuss this.
Let's do it on location at the marina.
There you go. I don't know. Our last on location in Ghostwater, we kind of broke our camera.
Unfortunately, it seems we're stuck in this bureaucracy now, and I don't mean just the APA and DEC. I mean the courts, and is there a solution that is, I think it's going to have to be left to the courts. I hope people can think about places like Lake George, or go down to the Finger Lakes and some of the lakes there and see the levels of use. And Lake George, they've had to create a whole new bureaucracy just to deal with it. And, I've said to some people, I said, do we want the largest marina in the Adirondack Park on the 18th largest lake? And, I know, you've got Middle and Asita as well, but we've also got another marina, or two additional marinas as well. So, think of the worst case scenario of what Saranac Lake could look like, and how do we make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, and I think it gets to that. A way to answer that question of what impact might this have is the state doing what they're supposed to do, which is the carrying capacity, and looking at that data and then making data-informed decisions. And I don't think anybody can argue that that's meaningless data. It seems like it's important data to have. So,
given that, how can we move things along as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I think anybody who's following this is sick and tired of the drama. So anyway, I appreciate you coming on, Jack, and it's been fun, and would love to have you back on. We need a follow-up episode on bugs. Okay, we got to go deep dive on bugs. But yeah, I would say, I think hopefully this illustrates to people too that we're willing to do. We always say we want people to come on, and people want to. I have nothing to say, I have nothing to talk about, but everyone here is in this town has an opinion on something, and this is a place we're trying to offer to come and share your opinions in a respectful manner. And Jack and I can arm wrestle when the camera goes off and decide who won the argument. So there was no argument.
I was watching your program with Chris Knight. He was talking about the old radio show, Talk of the Town. I don't think you wanted to come up with your own version of Talk of the Town.
Yeah, that was kind of one of the original inspirations for when I was thinking about a podcast. But then I also had a lot of memories of how nasty Talk of the Town could get. And yeah, there was as a young lad growing up here, listening to that at 6:30 in the morning on the way to school, and hearing some of the adults in the community espouse opinions that were pretty intense, was pretty formative. So hopefully we don't fill that void.
Well, thanks for letting me come on and share my thoughts.
Thanks for coming. All right, so that's the Saranac Lake Effect show. I was listening to a show where the host was able to immediately say that it was episode 293. We don't know what episode it is. We gave up, but we keep at it, and we love having guests on. So, Jack, after we're going to ask you who we should have. We're going to throw some people under the bus.
Okay.
We're going to get them on. Okay. Till next time.
Yeah.